Hi, I'm Vida Clocky, and welcome to my studio, and thank you for watching my YouTube channel. On this video, I would like to cover basic China painting strokes. I believe that as beginners, that's where we need to start out, and I think even the advanced China painters can step back and take a look at some of the strokes that make our leaves and our petals and our centers. And so stay tuned. Let me talk about the colors I'm going to be using for this practice. Perfect Pink, American Beauty, Mixing Yellow, Yellow Brown number 2, Chartreuse or light green, medium green like an antique, and then a dark green. And I mix all my China painting colors with open mineral oil. I paint with my semi-open oil, and I use Turpenoid Natural for a little bit of a brush cleaner or for wiping out, and odorless paint thinners to do a deeper clean cut. My brushes are the Aquaflow flat square shaders. I find that they keep their shape nicely, they don't lose hairs, and they have a nice square edge on them, so they work quite well. And then, of course, I'll use a little chisel tool if I need to clean up. So that's just basically it. Now, these are practice tiles that I send home with all my beginner China painters, and I ask them to practice these at home. I'm not sure if they all do, but I want them to learn their basic strokes before they get too deep into class. It certainly helps. I think learning the China painting strokes is so important. You wouldn't sit down and play the piano. You would be doing lots and lots of practices before you would ever think of doing that. So we as China painters have to start out with the very basics too, and these strokes are so important. First of all, we have the full flat stroke that's not shaded. Then we have the same flat stroke that's shaded. Now we have a diamond stroke and a shaded diamond stroke. Now the comma stroke is a very important stroke because we use that a lot when we're filtering around our flowers. Here's the double comma stroke, full dash, a shaded dash. This would be the type of stroke you would use for a branch. And now then your C stroke and your reverse C stroke. So let's cover those a little bit. I tell them use your cheap paints, don't use your expensive rubies or American Beauties. Go into your cheap greens or whatever when you're practicing. Now I make these tiles so they can practice underneath and then just wipe them off. So what's really important in a China painting is to not carry your oil over into your paint, because too much oil is going to lead to runs, and you're going to have less paint on your porcelain, and you're going to have to paint it many more times if you're an oily painter. What I use my oil for is mainly just to condition that brush. And I do have a brush care video on YouTube that explains how to train and condition a new brush. You might want to check that out, especially if you're a beginner with new brushes. And then how to clean and kind of resurrect some bad brushes. We all have a few of those too. So watch that video for any brush information. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to condition that brush somewhat on the tile. But then I go to my paper towel, and I see I have a little color in this brush yet, but that's okay because this is just practice. And I work that oil out of there to some degree. I don't want to come over to my painting and have a sloppy, oily brush. Now, the loading zone. This is also so important. You can't go in and grab your paint and slop it onto your piece and expect a smooth stroke. when you load your paints onto your tiles with your palette knife, always load them so the thinnest part of the paint is this way, because then this is your loading zone. If you load opposite this way with the blob of paint towards you, you're going into that blob of paint, and that's what you're getting on your brush. So you want to reverse that. Get your loading zone pulled out towards you. Just those little important things that seem to all add up. Let's do a full flat stroke here. So I'm going to put my brush in, get a load. I'm going to wiggle, 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 so that entire load is even. And I'm going to just do a flat load. And there it is. Now let's do a shaded flat stroke. Same thing, full load, pull, 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 wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Go into your antique or your medium value green, side load that, come down, lay your brush down. I guess I didn't get quite enough antique, or I could have went into a little dark green too. But if you were shading a leaf or something, this is the technique you would use. So that's a flat load and a shaded flat load. Let's go on to the diamond stroke. Basically the same thing. I'm conditioning my brush again with oil. Let's just go into the chartreuse, pull, 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 wiggle, wiggle. And you just lay that brush at an angle and lift. So it's press and lift. And a shaded diamond stroke, same thing as the flat stroke. Side load, lay it down and lift. All right, let's go on to the comma stroke. Pull, pull, pull. This can be shaded or not, doesn't matter. We can make it a shaded load. So you pull a diamond stroke, lift, and do a little tail. We'll do a double diamond here. So diamond stroke. So you pull and come around, do it again. Very, very basic, but it's all about the brush control. And students will ask me, I want your magic brush. Well, it's not the magic brush. It's the years of practice that make that brush work the way it's supposed to. Now these are diamond strokes that begin with a diamond stroke and end up with a comma. So they would be a comma stroke. Now this is the double comma, which is a diamond with a comma, diamond stroke with a comma, making them a double comma stroke. A full dash stroke is very, very simple. Just lay your brush on the side, walk it across. A shaded load, let's start out darker and go lighter, lighter, all the way across. Very simple, an easy way to do branches. Okay, now one of the strokes that's very important is the C stroke. We use that a lot, so I'm pulling that, I'm loading that brush, and it's just a basic C stroke. Press and lift. I'll load again now and do a reverse C stroke. Press and lift. So you need to get the feel of your paint and your brushes and keep practicing. That's the only way that you're going to get brush control, and you will enjoy your painting so much more. Now here's another practice tile that's been fired and I send home with my students and hopefully they use. It's just the basic strokes to a rose leaf, basic strokes to a pansy leaf, and a daisy or a mum leaf. Very simple basic strokes, but so important to learn that brush control. So I dropped down. I'm probably gonna do the rose in the same brush size, but I'm going to drop down to a smaller brush when I do some of these smaller ones. So let's go back to the chartreuse. Let's load. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Let's go into side load of antique and maybe even a little bit of dark green. Now you see I've got the strokes numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not the way it has to be. If you have to do more strokes or less strokes, that's fine. It's just a basic layout of the way I try to think of it. Now I'm right-handed, so I would lay my leaf this direction so the point is off to the right, so I can get that rounded stroke. There's that C stroke. 1, 2. Now I might reload. See, I went 1 to the vein, 2 to the vein. I'm going back to my paint. I'm going to reload again. And I'm going to follow these arrows. I'm going to hit 3 as away from the vein, away, away. I'm going to reload. I'm going to turn this towards me for the tip, and I'm going to do a comma stroke. And there we are. Now if you were going to finish this off, you might soften that a little bit. You could go back and cut out highlights or add the veins. But this is just a basic stroke video, so we're not going to get too technical. Let's go into like a pansy leaf, which is a little more elongated. Let's go on to the pansy leaf, and I will load chartreuse, a little antique. I can go into a little darker too. I'm turning the leaf again so that the tip is pointed out. Stroke 1 and 2 and 3, all to the vein. I'll reload again, pull away. So these are actual C strokes, away, away, and away. And now I'll turn it this way. The tip of a pansy leaf is more rounded, so instead of doing a comma stroke, I'll just do a little rounded tip on it, something like that. Now let's go on to a daisy or a mum leaf. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to go over here and condition it a little bit. And tap it on my towel. Full load of chartreuse, pull, pull, wiggle, wiggle, maybe just a side load of a medium and darker value. Okay, again, I'm turning that leaf so that that tip is off to the right. Here's my stroke. I've got several little strokes because the ends are, the edges of these leaves are a little serrated. So there was 4 strokes to the center, but I'm controlling each C stroke and lifting when I get to the center. If you learn these basic strokes, the entire time you're China painting will just be so much easier. Away, away, away. I'm lifting, away. I could go back in and reload if I want to, but I think I'm good. Now here's the tip. I'm going to turn this way, reload, come in with a little comma stroke. Well, I pressed a little too hard, so that's how that ended up, but a smaller little comma right there. And if you want to attach them or soften them, you can certainly do that. So that's kind of the basic leaf strokes I try to get my students to learn. And learning how to lightly touch and not push too hard is also another a way to get a little more color on. You push too hard when you bring your brush down and you're not depositing your paint, you're rubbing it off. So when you load, if you learn how to just lightly touch that color down, lightly touch that color down, you'll get more paint on your piece rather than pulling it away. I'll show that in a little darker value and see if it shows up a little better. Here's a hard push. You get just a softer stroke if you just don't push too terribly hard. Okay, so those are just practice pieces that you can make your own little tile, or this I just did with pen work. I'm sure some of this is available in some beginners' books. Okay, let's go on to the third tile, and that is the dot and dash, like a branch stroke, and then we'll tie it all together into a 3-leaf cluster. We can stay with the small brush here for that. If you just need to just go between flowers or to make a small impression, you would just use the edge, the corner of your brush to do that little dot stroke. And a dash stroke, just like what I showed you, and that will form a branch. I could be using a darker color here, but I think you can see it on camera. You see how learning that basic stroke is going to help you with a lot of different elements in your painting. Okay, now here, it's the same thing. I'm going to turn this leaf to the side so that that tip is out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I go to this cluster, I'll load my brush. 1, 2, you don't need the numbers anymore. There's 3, 4. Now I'll bring this tip to me and comma. I'll do this one back here same way. Maybe I'll go into a little darker green and slip this leaf under so it's to the vein, reload, away from the vein, away from the vein. I'm going to bring the tip towards me and comma stroke. Now the leaf on the end of a rose cluster of leaves is usually a little larger, so maybe I'll push this brush a little harder on that. 1, 2, to the vein. 1, 2, away from the vein. Pull towards me, or turn towards me, and comma stroke. Okay, I've got that entire cluster done. Arrangement of 3, and here is my branch. Simple and easy. I think we play too much. And if you can just get these basic strokes to the vein, away, away, and comma. You get in and get out. Now let's look at a simple little flower. I'm going to clean this brush, both these brushes, in my odorless mineral spirits. That gets the worst of the paint out, and then I'll go into a little Turpenoid Natural because I'm going to be changing colors, so I don't want any green into my pink flowers. Alright, I'll take the larger of the two here. I'm going back over and conditioning, getting some oil into that brush. There's a little bit of green in there yet. See if I can work that out. Okay. Now if I look at each individual petal, each petal is like a C-stroke also. So I'm going to go into my pink, pull, 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 pull. Get a nice load, and maybe just a tiny side load of American Beauty. I'm going to lay this brush down, pull it in, reload for that center, That was a C stroke. Now this is a backward C stroke. I'm going to turn this way, reload with my pink, a little bit of American Beauty, and pull. There's something on this tile. Well, they've made quite a few trips with beginners. Who knows what they've been into, but now I've got that basic stroke laid down. Now I can just do a light feather and soften that stroke out. Let's do another. I like to leave a little highlight on some of my tips on my flowers, so I can fill in with background later. Okay, to the center and around the center, and let's pull out some color here. Now here's a little turn back, so we're going to have to add color onto the turn back, and we have to go into our darker value, which is American Beauty, and push under. We have to make light touch the dark. And the feather stroke, I tell my students to take and just take the brush so you can barely feel it. You're just barely touching the surface. So that's how I would feather and soften that stroke. Barely touching, just a feather touch. That way you aren't wiping off too much paint. Of course, that was a different color pink that's on there originally, but full load of pink, side load of American Beauty, and we'll finish this off. Maybe a little more American Beauty if it's going under this petal here. And grab that edge and do a feather stroke. Okay, now this has already got the center in, so let's move over here. I'm going to go to my cleaner, smaller brush. This is just a very basic C stroke again. Mixing yellow, I'll go over and pull the mixing yellow. Here, backward C. Wipe my brush off a little and go into my yellow-brown number 2. Pull, and it's a C stroke. So basically I've got my flower. And if I was going to keep going with this, of course, I would be coming in with background color and filtering that and cutting back and making sure that I had good highlights up against that background color. But these are your basic strokes, and if you keep practicing them and get that in your mind, how you're going to lay each stroke in, pretty soon, especially with your leaves and that, you don't even have to think about it anymore. Your flower petals, that's a little different. Your basic strokes are the same, but your petals are different. So the way you lay in the petals might differ a little bit, but mainly they will come off. All those strokes, no matter what your flowers are, should fall into one of these strokes that I have on the very first tile. Thank you for joining me today on my lesson with brush strokes. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll get a chance to practice. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and ring the bell below and to get notifications on my upcoming videos. If you have any questions or need supplies or want some seminar information, please go to my website at vitascollectibles.com.